Hello folks, my name's Hypocrisite and welcome to another episode of my Equestria at War campaign as the Griffonian Empire. In the previous episode we had a great event. Emperor Grover VI had ascended to the throne, and right now we have a problem regarding students' protests, and we've chosen a path of peaceful democracy, sort of government. Yeah, we'll see how it will go in the end, because at first I was more in favor of sending the tanks, because I've seen this focus draft a constitution, and I thought that it would give us our constitutional monarchy. But in the end, the so to speak harmony Republican branch of this focus will also give us the constitution. So I think that it all boils down to whether we should go with a more autocratic government or more democratic. So I've chosen the democratic. And without further ado, let's go with another focus for a better tomorrow. The protests remain calm and there is no threat of revolution. Yet, nevertheless, His Majesty plans to accept most of the demands of the student movement. His motive is not to end the resistance, but to reform the empire into a more democratic nation that genuinely cares for its subjects. And in the previous episode, we have also acquired a war goal against West Griffonian Union, and it won't expire because it is a claim justification. I mean, Nova Griffonia have claims or cores, and we have claims for this part of the colony. So I think that we will go with war right now. And let's see how it will go. And it's beginning. Oh, I forgot to call Nova Griffonia. And we've landed. But we only have to wait for our marines to go and secure our foothold, but I don't think it will be possible. Yeah, it won't be possible. Well, that's sad. But let's see what can we do to make short work of the rest of the alliance, because maybe we could go through Changeling Hives just to go to Equestria. That would be great. And Nova Griffonia wants to give us something. The reforms of Grover VI. Today marked the beginning of a new age for the Empire. His Majesty Grover VI passed his initial reforms, which primarily focused on establishing the foundation for further change. Most notably, he dismissed advisors who had previously opposed the conciliatory stance with the protesters, and greatly reduced the power of the Nobles' Council to the point there was very little they could do to influence governance and legislation. Many of the peers protested this act, given that the council has performed with admirable dedication and little to no scandals, but the emperor cared little. But when they threatened to tell the old duchess that her nephew was slandering the noble griffs, who worked so hard to raise Grover to the throne, he responded that the nobles served the empire, not the other way. Other smaller reforms included legalizing protests of all kinds, prohibiting censorship, forbidding religious officials from participating in government, allowing all religions and sects except for Maorites, who remained banned, and recognizing every single regional language spoken within the empire, to a better future. Replace Council of Nobles with the Grover reforms. The Council of Nobles, which one was that? Oh, so we will change from political power gain and daily support for non-aligned to support to everything than non-aligned. Well, if that will give us something better. Okay, now we have 3. Oh, I won't choose that right now, so we have 2 focuses to choose. Support the Volksfront. The Volksfront has for some years now been banned, a political organization whose members were hounded as Republican sympathizers and traitors. Now His Majesty has decided to lift the ban and pardon the members of the party because the only crime they committed was advocating liberty. I think that we could go with this one right now. And Nova Griffonian gives us stuff. Oh. And they tried to invade us, but they couldn't. Hehe. Okay, so right now we are slaughtering the Maryland, but they have already entrenched in their capital, Sunset. But I think that they won't last long without any supplies. A meeting with Van Cleef. So far, Edwin Van Cleef, the leader of the underground Volksfront and a stonemason by trade, had been distrustful of Grover VI. He had been invited to a meeting with the Emperor like other prominent protest leaders, but refused it, thinking it was a plot to imprison him for his old attempts at terrorism. When His Majesty officially pardoned him alongside other Volksfront members, he was positively surprised and decided to trust the Emperor for now. This is why he cautiously accepted a second invitation to meet the Emperor in person, this time without anyone else. Even when it was just 2 of them, inside Grover's office, he still glanced behind his back, fearing guards to burst inside to arrest him. But the Emperor reassured him with calming words and promises of peace. Indeed, Edwin let his guard down and talked with the Emperor for hours about the future of the Empire. While Grover refused any requests for abdication and full transition to democracy, he was willing to form a parliament like Van Cleef proposed, and to implement local democratic rule in the regions of the Empire. When the meeting ended, it was past midnight, with both parties satisfied and looking forward to future cooperation. What a pleasant fellow. Sorry for my mistakes, but I lost my focus for a moment. I think that we will go now with Forgive and Forget. After the revolution of 978, thousands of political prisoners have languished in detention, and the imperial reunification only swelled this number with countless prisoners of war and resistance members. Now His Majesty has ordered the immediate pardon and release of those who once saw him as an enemy. The Fall of Sunset. Fighting has come to an end in the city of Sunset as the last of the new Marylander defenders surrendered on the steps of the Opera House. The building itself had been gutted by fire caused by Griffonian artillery barrages. The Sunset Harbor Bridge remained intact as the new Marylander forces couldn't bring themselves to destroy the iconic symbol of the city. The Griffonian flag now flies from the top of the bridge's archway, letting all know who now controls the city. Time to have a Barbie on the beach. Okay, so now the West Griffonian Union has capitulated, so now we should attend to our front. So right now we have a bit of cleaning up to do with such cauldrons as here to be taken care of. Okay, so from what I can see, they have okay, so they have a military access, so even though I squished them, how is that possible? They are not at war against me. What? Okay, so I've heard that in Hearts of Iron 4 there is no option to attack from a neutral country even when there is a military access, and that's why I couldn't finish some of my campaigns. And now I can see that Equestrians can in fact attack me from Yakizakistan even though they're not at war against me. And that's bullshit. That's bullshit. I know that they have a lot of military ground forces, but I don't care. Freedom for all. Yesterday, across the empire, crowds formed near the numerous prisons and internment camps which held political prisoners. The crowds primarily consisted of relatives, friends and allies of the prisoners, but also news reporters, curious onlookers and armed guards. They had gathered there to witness the liberation of thousands of political prisoners who had been imprisoned during the reunification wars, though some had been in prison since the revolution of 978. When the gates opened and flocks of former prisoners finally came pouring out, their loved ones rushed to meet them, and cameras of the reporters flashed constantly, capturing the emotional moments. One example of such a moment was a 60-year-old veteran NRP member embracing his grandchildren, having been in prison ever since the revolution. Some of the prisoners were of course dangerous terrorists, but the guards made sure they would cause no trouble. This morning, the front pages of all newspapers displayed the pictures, most of them praising the emperor for his mercy and kindness. However, some newspapers, such as Campo Panti Liber of Praiwen, criticized this act, especially as the prisons in Praiwen had now released thousands of communist PCP members. They predicted a sharp rise in terrorism and acts of sabotage. His Majesty, however, was confident that his kindness would only be repaid with kindness, and not with violence. No Griffin deserved to be imprisoned for their political beliefs or their brave resistance against a despotic regime. If he offered the prisoners what they desired, reforms and freedom, then why would they resist him? Hopefully this won't cause any issues. Okay, so I think that we'll go now with separate temples and the state. The influence of the Archonate of Boreas had always been strong in Griffonheim, but this influence kept growing until the line between three temples and the empire itself became blurry. The emperor has decreed that this must change, so religious authorities became humble servants of the people. The separation of temples and the state. His Majesty has decided to continue his reforms which limited the power of the three temples. However, he has taken a more cautious approach to the matter. The influence of the priesthood has already been diminished due to the actions of former regent Gabriela Eagleclaw, who had a personal grudge with the late Archon of Boreas, Eros VII. Thus, it meant that the Triarchy's political power was non-existent. and the many knightly orders who were pledged to archons have been integrated in the Reichsarmy. Not every Griff was satisfied with the situation, particularly the gods fearing Griffons, and the Emperor has decided to allow the temples to hold limited, if ineffectual, power within their area. However, it was made particularly clear that the once influential Griffons of Fate would never hold considerable any sway within the state apparatus. It needed to be done. So maybe we should go with unban regionalist parties. The regent was determined from the very beginning to make the empire far more centralized than it had been before, refusing to allow nations such as Kingdom of Aquileia and the Kingdom of Wingbardy to even exist. But the emperor says there is no need to be so extreme, and that regionalists aren't rebels but loyal subjects who simply desire more autonomy. Oh, so they have managed to reconquer their capital, but I think that this won't last long. Yeah, as expected. Oh, but I didn't expect that. Maybe let's take care of this problem. Okay, so right now I deeply regret my decision of trying to reconquer those lands. Really. Liberty for all. During the Regency, the regent had banned all regionalist and nationalist organizations and forced them into hiding in order to curtail organized resistance in occupied regions. Their members were persecuted and suspected of being traitors and rebels who wished to liberate their homelands once more from the empire. A while has passed since their unification was achieved, yet these underground resistance cells continued to exist. Instead of vainly wasting more manpower and resources to hunt them down, Grover VI has instead decided to lift the ban and pardon the members of the organizations. Indeed, they will now be allowed to form proper political parties to advocate for regional autonomy, though independence will remain out of the question. Most members of these parties will happily welcome the news. Wait, what? Most members of these parties have happily welcomed the news, but some most fanatic nationalists such as Leonard Rodier of Aquileia and Giulio Biccolini of Wingbardy either remain skeptical or continue to demand full independence. His Majesty believes they too will calm down in time once he passes further reforms. Don't get too rowdy now. Well, let's see how the chart looks like. So the Griffonische Volksfront is actually on the forefront. Okay, we'll see how this will go in the future. And right now we'll go with defining the Kaiser's authority. Ever since Grover I, the Emperor's authority was assumed to be absolute or non-existent, depending on the Emperor. None dared to speak against Grover II in fear of violent death, while everyone conspired against poor Grover V. This fluctuation must end once and for all. Grover VI shall be neither absolute nor a puppet. Oh, I've broke through! That's nice. So let's adjust a bit my order and then you can go. Checks and balances. To better define the Kaiser's authority and create clear limits for it, His Majesty has formalized a separation of powers in the government. 3 separate bodies shall exist: the Emperor himself, the Imperial Parliament, and the Courts of Law in Griffonstone. Each branch would have separate responsibilities and powers and would be capable of keeping the power of the other 2 in check. No longer could the emperor pass legislation without approval from the parliament and the judiciary. Neither could the other two do the same if the emperor were to veto their decision. Thus, balance would be achieved in governance. Grover VI had given up his near-absolute power, but had also prevented of having the fate of his unfortunate father befall either himself or any of his descendants. The Regency Council would rule on the emperor's behalf, but now it would not be able to do anything without getting approval from the parliament and the courts. Never again would a small number of individuals be able to cause such widespread damage, which included the emperor himself. The Kaiser is not always right. And now we will go with the imperial constitution. The emperor desires to go one step further from simply defining the limits of his powers. He wishes to draft an official constitution for the empire, first of its kind, which will define new democratic bodies of government to rule alongside the emperor. It will also introduce something truly groundbreaking: universal suffrage for all citizens. I think that we will soon be able to capitulate New Maryland, because they are on the brink. Wait, what? The leader of River Coalition will not capitulate unless every other member has capitulated. I think that it's a bit of a mistake, and I think that they are done with. So the constitution has been drafted, and the only focuses that are left to be chosen are demilitarize the economy and the article of federalization. And the recruitable population factor minus 15% is a lot. So maybe we'll go with the militarize the economy. I think that this will be much less damaging, I think. And New Maryland has capitulated. Great news. I expected nothing less. And we've went to civilian economy, but I don't think that this hurt us a lot, because it didn't. We have still a lot of military factories to use, and I think that we will go with the article of federalization. The empire is too vast to be a unitary oppressive state. Powers must be dispersed from the capital into the numerous regions of the empire to a reasonable extent. This way every griffin will have their voice heard, either by a local governor or by the emperor himself, no matter how far away from the capital they live. Okay, let's go with pushing back our enemies. Okay, so they needed a bit more preparation than I thought that they will need, but as far as you can see, everything goes smooth. Okay, so everything is going great actually. I'm really sick of all those naval invasions, to be honest. And I hope that those will end soon. Or... I forgot about my my submarines. God damn it! That was a stupid thing to do on my part. Okay, so let's use, or maybe not, maybe not this order, but this. Let's go there, and you will not help with naval support, naval invasion, but now you will patrol our our waters. This won't be too hard, I think. And we have the first election. Many in the world cannot believe it to be true. The Empire is preparing to hold its first democratic elections. Not only will a parliament be formed, but local governors will be voted for as well. The conflict between the former liberal republic and the authoritarian empire has come to an end, as they have now become one and the same. Well, I think that I won't be able to end this war, because supply problems are killing my troops, and I think that I won't be able to support any more of the war effort right now. And I think that I will have to say goodbye soon. I mean, as soon as I'll end this focus tree of Grover. But I think that all in all, it was a good playthrough, even though I'm not as experienced a player than others are, I think. Okay, so this is it, the election. Holding elections for the first time in a country that is used to monarchism and ruled by nobility is not easy, doubly so when the country in question spans half a continent. Well, it was a massive operation with tens of thousands of government officials getting to work, preparing polling booths across the empire in every single city, town and village. The emperor had hired several Republicans, many of them former prisoners and some even former members of the NRP, to offer him and his government advice on how to accomplish this task. Thankfully, the Republicans already had plans for a pan-Griffonian election, for it had been their dream for decades. They therefore eagerly helped, and soon enough the plans were proceeding on schedule. While the elections were being prepared, candidates began to campaign, trying to attract voters to their cause. This election would decide the makeup of the imperial parliament as well as regional assemblies, meaning the campaigning was nationwide. Soon enough, it was clear two parties would dominate the vote. The conservative Kaiserpartei led by Eckhard Wiesner and the liberal Volksfront party of Edwin van Cleef. The former did not want radical change and thought that patience was needed, and also advocated for a powerful emperor who would keep the parliament and the courts of law in check. They had many religious members among their ranks too, and hoped to preserve the power of the clergy to some extent. Primarily, they attracted rural voters who were opposed to radical change but were still loyal to His Majesty. The latter had been an outlawed organization before being legalized by Grover VI, who advocated democratic rule both nationally and regionally and wished to further limit the powers of the emperor, eventually turning it into a ceremonial position. However, they no longer desire a proper republic without a monarch like in the past, either as a gesture of friendship to the emperor or because they didn't want to be outlawed again. Young urbanites and workers were their most loyal voters. Now the day of election has finally arrived, and crowds are filling polling booths, eager to take part in the historical landmark event. The gargantuan task of counting tens of millions of votes began after the booths were closed, but eventually the results would be revealed. So we have two options. The Kaiserpartei secures a majority, which will give us an unaligned government with Eckhard Wiesner, or the Volksfront secures a majority, which will give us a harmony government with Edwin van Cleef. So there is actually no no difference, but a change in the government. Mainly because those two are actually hand in hand. I think that for the sake of roleplay, I will go. I think I'll go with Volksfront. Ooh, there is a big change coming. Oh, for fuck's sake. That's an ugly, very ugly flag. God damn it. It's so ugly, really. Okay, so the only thing that actually is to be completed is the economy tree. I think that I will go with cap conscription terms. During the reunification wars, there was no definite limit on the length of conscription for citizens. While this enabled us to have a large pool of Griffin power to draw from, it did mean that a large portion of the populace was forced to serve in the army for a long time. Now a formal limit of 5 years of service shall be universally introduced. Well, that's the only thing that will give us manpower. And now we are capped on limited conscription. So that wasn't a good idea to start a war, really. But yeah, let's just go with the rest, and I think that we will wrap the whole campaign in this one episode, I think. Ensure free trade. Securing strategic resources by limiting exports and trying our best to make our enemies not prosper by refusing to trade with them was reasonable before. Now, when our enemies are few and our economy is demilitarizing, it is no longer justified. Emperor Grover VI wishes to tear down all barriers on commerce, which will further boost civilian economy. And we'll go to free trade. But I think that this will completely wreck our war economy, because we are very low on chromium. Oh, but yeah, well, now we are not. The free trade is ensured, and now we will go with... Yeah, well, the Kaiserliche Autobahn. Actually, I have maxed out my infrastructure, so that's nothing that will be of use to me. Okay, so the Kaiserliche Autobahn is completed, and now we'll go with a caring state. The Empire has caused a tremendous amount of suffering and loss of life with the reunification wars. Now it is time to pay back our moral debt and to give back to those we have taken from. With increased revenue from a revived civilian economy, we can afford to support those less fortunate in our society and make sure all our subjects live better lives. Okay, now the caring state is completed, and we'll go with securing the future. Imperial education during the Regency served two purposes: eradication of illiteracy and indoctrination of our subjects. Neither are no longer needed. An extensive reform of the curriculum will liberalize the arts and sciences. The students who used to protest on the streets will be grateful, as we will allow them to think for themselves. With securing the future now over, we'll go with a new empire for a new age. The Emperor has reshaped his empire as he desired, and solved the crisis that threatened to to end his reign before it had even truly begun. Now there is peace and stability in the empire once more, and its subjects look forward to a long and prosperous life under the wise guidance of His Majesty. Gott erhalten Grover den Kaiser. And the focus is completed. Students' protests are removed, and I doubt that there will be any more lore-related events that will happen anytime soon, or at least at all. So I think that it's a good opportunity and good idea to end this episode and this whole series right now. Thank you for watching. I hope that you've liked this episode as well as the whole series. I know that I was sometimes a bit maybe boring, maybe a bit too plain when it comes to speaking, but this is how I roll. And I'd like to hear a bit of so be sure to leave a like and a comment and to subscribe to my channel if you like content like this that you were watching. And I will see you in something new. See ya.